This is a response to a question from a member of our Patreon support community. His name is George Griffith, and he asks interesting questions about the point and purpose of the tariffs that Trump and the Republicans slapped onto goods being imported from Mexico across much of Mr. Trump's presidency. And George asks whether these are decorations, he puts it, on market manipulation. Well, the short answer is yes, but actually they're more than decorations. They are market manipulation. There are a variety of ways you can manipulate markets. All countries do it. Some do it more, some do it less. When most countries do it, and particularly when they do it in a large way, using multiple ways that I'll get into, it produces a kind of withdrawal from market exchange, reduction in international trade, or if the market that they're being intervening in are domestic markets, then it's a cutback of domestic exchange. Over the 2 or 3 centuries that tariffs have played an important role, it has been the general consensus that more is lost by imposing them than is gained. It wouldn't work that way if the country that starts it didn't have to face virtually every time retaliation. So what ends up happening is that every country retaliates so that the tariffs become generalized, and all it does is discourage people from engaging in trade so that all the benefits of trade, which is why people got into it in the first place, are lost. And in the end, it has been decided, particularly after the experiences of the Great Depression in the 1930s and in the war and immediate period after the war, that the best option for the world as a whole would be to get rid of tariffs, to have a free trade system. The general agreement on tariffs and trade that came after World War II was the international commitment to do that. And it has been generally followed. All countries, as I said, do some of this manipulation, but they keep it to a relatively low level. We have the World Trade Organization to try to police that it stays at a low level, and if it ever gets out of that low level, there are mechanisms to contest it, to take it to a global court, and so on. There's an effort to do for the world the kind of controlled free trade that the United States, for example, does as a nation for the exchanges among the 50 states. Mr. Trump has thrown all of that out of the window. Because he has a complicated grasp of economics, there's no evidence of that. Because he has leadership experience that has taught him about the goods and bads, he has none of that either. So there really is no basis, neither in his work nor in that of the advisors he's gathered around him, to do this for economic reasons. The manipulation of markets, which is what you are doing if you put a tax on everything that comes in from outside to discourage Americans from buying those now higher priced goods, priced higher because they have to pay that tax, and the people who buy them have to pay the price of these imports plus the tax, which is all that a tariff is, imposed on it. It should be made crystal clear, because Mr. Trump doesn't understand this, that the tariffs are not paid by Mexico. They are paid by the American company that brings the goods from Mexico into the United States, the importer, and all that importer can do is either pay the tax himself or raise the prices to American final consumers so that they pick up part of the cost. So when Mr. Trump imposes a tariff, he is taxing the American people. The very thing that as a presidential candidate and as a Republican he promised not to do. Well, the imposition of this tariff is, in my judgment, a matter of politics, a matter of a political theater Mr. Trump wants to present himself as somehow the savior, the benefactor, the man whose policies are going to bring back America's greatness by giving people the jobs they've lost, the incomes they no longer get, the security their jobs no longer have. And in order to play the game that he's actually doing that, posturing in front of the TV cameras, slapping the Mexicans, attacking the Chinese, denouncing the Europeans, going after the Canadians, all the different steps of his theater are made to make him look good. He hopes that'll get him reelected. The long-term consequences of the economy are of no concern to him, because if he doesn't get elected, he goes back to being a real estate billionaire, and none of that will affect him anyway. So yes, it's market manipulation, little more, but it can have very bad long-term effects, doubly bad if the other side retaliates, which the Mexicans, the Canadians, the Indians, the Chinese, and the Europeans have already begun to do. So we're revisiting a past of the world economy that we thought we had gotten out of, but because Mr. Trump is a reactionary politician, he reacts against the problems of the American economy by a fantastic theatrical return to the past, which has no serious economic positive prospects. In hopes this has been an interesting answer to your question, thank you, of course, for you and all the other Patreon supporters for the encouraging support you provide.